November 13th, 2018, Carver Planning Board meeting. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on our agenda tonight is we have two sign permits. The first one is for the drop zone, Route 58 and South Meadow Road. Stephen, what do we know about the drop zone?
Well, at the last planning board meeting, Mr. Chair, the sign as it was proposed was not compliant with the design standards of the bylaws or the dimensions. Having worked with the applicant, I've produced for you a yellow piece of paper that has a depiction of what the new design is. The new design will be conforming to the dimensions, 3 by 3. It will have only the business logo, as you see here in the oval, with a directional arrow, as allowed by the zoning bylaws. If the board is so inclined to approve, I will draft the special permit for signatures for our next meeting and instruct the applicant to pursue a building permit.
Any questions? Is there anyone here tonight for the drop zone? Do we have color regulations on signs?
It does restrict the number of colors, Mr. Chairman, to only 2 colors, which is what we have here. But for the black lettering for the websites, green and red. The picture came out yellow as it was photocopied on yellow paper, but it's not actually a yellow background.
Oh, okay, I see. And where were they proposing to put these signs, and how many signs were there?
It's only the one sign. It's actually going into the location where it was previously illegally installed. The applicant has removed that sign from that location. It's right at the corner of South Meadow and Route 58. There's an Edaville sign there presently, as well as a couple of other businesses with directional advertisements.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, it's not a question, but that area is, like he mentioned, there's already quite a few signs there already. I'm not sure this sign meets the, the social or economical needs of Carver. So I'm not sure how proper a place that is for it at this time.
What other signs do we have there? I did see something in the, no, there was something else, I guess. I don't think we have one of the signs in the area of the drop zone.
There's one picture that just shows the Edaville.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Then that doesn't show what's next to it along 58 going south.
I don't know, how does anybody else feel about it?
Well, I'm glad to see that the sign that was there is coming down and that they're making this the right size. Do we have something in writing that says how many signs and who do we and don't we allow to put, like this is a public area that I'm assuming is free to probably first come, first serve?
I don't know how that works.
That's effectively correct. I mean, we have to accept that there is a limited amount of real estate that's there, and only really so many signs are able to go there. This is the only sign permit application that's come in for that location since I've arrived about a year ago. Not really certain how long the Edaville sign or the other signs have been up there, but it is true that there is limited real estate that's available there.
I mean, sometimes we put temporary signs, but they're put in for just 5 or 6 weeks. Somebody comes before the board and we allow that, then they take them out. This is going to be all year long. Okay. I guess it's advertising a business.
Yeah, I just don't know how economically positive it is for Carver.
I guess it's just like advertising for any other business. Is this going to be, it's going to be open all year long? Do we know?
I don't have a determination on that, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not sure that that is
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's an adequate approach to take, as a couple of other businesses, some of the ones I mentioned earlier, are also seasonal.
Is this the only application that they have filled out?
Ms.
The one that
Bogomich?
says the measurements are 3 by 3?
He did amend this design, however, that is the only application he filled out.
Okay. Because it's not reflected in the permit. Nor are the colors. The permit seems to be missing a lot, actually.
So why don't we just move him to our next meeting and have him come in? And have him work with Stephen on, getting the application correct, I would say. Or better defined would probably be the proper way to put it. And have him come in and talk about his business. The reason why I say that, it is a budding neighboring town business that's right on the line. I can see people going there and then coming back and spending money at our restaurants and stuff like that, so. It does draw traffic through our town, and people are gonna spend it here, so. Economically, I think it's good. It's a pretty popular place from what I understand. I've never personally been there, but I'd like him to be able to come in and chat with us anyways.
He wasn't here the last time? Was he here the last time? I can't remember.
He was not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, if that could happen, if we could put this off to the next meeting, have him come explain what he's doing out there and talk about his business. Work out any problems with the application with you. That'd be great. All right, so we'll put that off for the next meeting. We have another sign permit. It's for camp construction on 20 Gate Street. What do you have to? What do you have about this, Stephen?
Well, I didn't realize we were going to have an applicant attending this evening.
Okay,
Welcome, sir.
thank you.
I was going to request the board continue this to the next meeting so I could work with the applicants. It looks like there's advertising 3 businesses. This isn't a residential agriculture area. I just want to know more about the sign and the businesses before I make a recommendation to the planning board.
What would you like to know?
Well, frankly, there's a couple of things I'd like to know, but are these 3 separate businesses operating out of one location?
They are.
And can you describe the location for us?
It's 38 acres. The building that we house our construction company in is a 3,200 square foot Morton building. We currently operate our office out of our home over on Pleasant Street, and we're going to be moving over there. We have 14 acres of cranberry bogs, and also through the construction company, we have a realty holding company. We don't sell real estate or anything like that, but we do purchase properties for ourselves that we have a small business out of there, but predominantly it's for our construction company and the cranberry business.
And are any of these home occupations?
No,
So this is an office in a residential agriculture?
that is correct.
One office for 3 businesses?
One office for 3 businesses, yes. I'm the president for all 3 of them. And where it is, I mean, the entryway to this property is a dirt road, and if you're looking for it, you're gonna drive right by it. So there's you know, we wanted to get a number out there, so it's rare that people come to our office, but occasionally it does happen.
What are the dimensions of each of the signs?
I can't tell you that, but I can, the overall size of the sign is whatever that was that I turned in, it's,
40 by 43?
40 by
Yeah.
43.
Can you pronounce all three names of the businesses for me?
I can, Camp Construction,
Okay.
Mycock Realty,
Uh-huh.
and Kimberry Farms.
Is that a DBA, the second one you mentioned?
No, it's a corporation.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to conduct a site visit with the applicants.
Okay.
And we can render a final recommendation at our next planning meeting on the 27th.
Okay, all right. Is that all right?
I suppose
Take a
so.
look, yeah, have to arrange time with Stephen,
Okay,
when he can take a look where you're gonna put the sign. And then we'll vote to, on it at our next meeting,
okay.
right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, are you Mr. Rodriguez?
I'm Paul Rodriguez,
Paul
yes.
Rodriguez. So the number that's on this is acceptable to reach you on?
0900.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I'll give you a call in the morning.
I'm on Nantucket tomorrow, but how about Thursday?
Thursday's great.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is a discussion and possible vote on the application of a renewable energy development partner LLC requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 3100, 3580, and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw located at 13A Gate Street and 0 Godfrey Circle in Carver, Mass. It's assessors maps 1-L-R and 1-0-R. It's to allow a large-scale ground-mounted, dual-use solar power generating project in a residential agricultural district. And this is a continuation of, from last meeting.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, the planning board, 4 members, yourself, Mr. Hoffman, Ms. Bogart, and Ms. Dayhill voted to close the public hearing and to approve with conditions. Contained in your packet is a copy of the decision and special permit. It's also perhaps even in front of you. I laid down a copy in front of everyone before the meeting. Contained in that decision are 7 conditions. Some of them are boilerplate, but noting some of the conditions that were placed on the project by this planning board. Number 3, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall construct observation pits and submit results to the board. Number 6, prior to the issuance of an electrical permit, the applicant shall ensure compliance with National Electric Codes requirements on access, fencing, and security. A statement of compliance shall be submitted to the board by the electrical inspector. And then there was the condition of the decommissioning bond as well, number 4. Prior to the issuance of an electrical permit, the applicant shall provide the board with a decommissioning bond in the amount of $101,500 to run with the life of the project. The other conditions you see there are fairly standard for what we include for solar projects. Unless there's anything else to add in those conditions, I have here a copy of the final decision that can then be signed by the 4 voting members.
I don't know if I get a copy of that.
You can have
Did you have
one.
one? Let me see, oh, I guess I did. Fine, okay. Yep, this is the paper here. All right, all right. No, we have, okay, oh, then the back is the deconditioned, right, okay.
So this has already been approved, correct? We approved this at the last meeting.
That's correct, Mr.
This was
Hoffman.
just, we were waiting for the conditions.
That's correct. And I believe I captured in my notes everything that the board had recommended. But if there's anything I missed, I have here a live version of the decision, so we can print it off this evening and still obtain signatures.
That covers everything. I remember. So we don't have to take a vote on this, then this is already voted on? It's
That's
just,
correct.
Yeah,
just have to agree that,
that these are the conditions that we set forth, I guess, yeah. Is there anything that anybody sees that has been omitted or thinks that we should add? Okay, so there was a question about whether we should do fencing or not, so in order to cover that, we have prior to the issuance of electrical permit, any applicant ensure compliance with National Electric Code requirements on access fencing and security. That would be a good thing to have by the electrical inspector, whether that will need a fence or not. We didn't put in this about they were gonna build a berm in front of the property.
At the site visit, Mr. Chairman, it was determined by the planning board that there was likely adequate sites or screening from the site from public rights-of-way as well
Okay.
as abutting neighbors. So you can see in number 2, what was discussed at the site visit was the developer may at its discretion elect to install the
Okay.
proposed landscaping.
I think that just about covers it. And we did, and so, yeah, we already voted to approve, so we're just looking at this and we're just saying that this looks good, so this is what we'll do. We don't have to vote on this.
You don't have to vote on it if you're not
Okay.
amending any of the conditions, Mr. Chair.
Everybody agreeable to that?
looks good to me.
All right.
Tom, I'll have them sign at the end of the meeting, and I will transmit this to the clerk and give you a copy.
Okay.
You'll be able to pick up your formal copy from the clerk in 21 days.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, the next is a continuation of a public hearing on the application of Priolo Plymouth Street Realty Trust requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230, 3900, and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw. And it's located at 0 Plymouth Street in Carver, Mass. Assessors maps 18, lot 8, and to allow a 32-unit townhouse development in a residential agricultural area. So where do we stand with this?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'm going to excuse myself where I'm a direct abutter.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we've received a request from the applicant to continue to our next meeting on November 27th. I have been monitoring the conversation between the applicant and the town's peer review team at Fuss & O'Neill. They are moving ahead as expeditiously as I believe they can. We've had a couple of volleys with our TRC memos, our Technical Review Committee memos, and we received as recently as Friday the applicant's updated response to that memo. Fuss & O'Neill is looking at that as we speak, and it's my understanding and expectation that we can have this resolved. Minor details are remaining, like landscaping and including some of the gradients on some of the maps, but it's really just at this point semantics. So
Okay.
my expectation is that we'll have this wrapped up for the board's vote by the next meeting on the 27th.
Okay. I'll say we'll move on. So we'll,
Mr. Chair, I think we need a motion and a vote
Oh,
to
okay.
continue.
to continue the hearing, okay.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing for the application of Pearlo Plymouth Street Realty Trust to November 27th at 7 o'clock.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second for the continuance. Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the next is another continuance of a public hearing. It was on the application of David Mulcahy, 1929 Development LLC of Kingston, requesting a site plan review pursuant to sections 2230 and 3100 of the Carver zoning bylaw for a property located at 157 North Main Street on Assessors Map 24, Lot 4A in Carver, Mass. And the applicant requests approval to construct an addition of a craftsman tradesman's building to an existing single-family dwelling in the high commercial zone.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Richard Cirque, and I represent the applicant. We are seeking a continuation of the pending site plan approval petition in this case. The hearing has begun, and it was continued until tonight. I can tell you that we will also be filing an application for a special permit under the Water Resource Protection District, which will result in notice to abutters in that case and a public hearing in that case. And we're hoping that December 11 might be the date of that public hearing, when it could be joined with this public hearing as one public hearing. There was ambiguity, I think, under the Water Resource Protection District as to whether or not this project fell within its ambit, but to remove any doubt, and because I know the sensitivity of the town to the Water Resource Protection District, which encompasses the entire town, we're going to apply for the special permit and remove any doubt about that. I know you've received the consultant's report thus far from Mr. Martin, and he will be evaluating now this project under the special permit criteria as well as site plan approval criteria. But I wanted to alert you as well to an additional issue. The use of this property by David Mulcahy, DBA O'Deere, is the use is for someone who is a licensed professional in the deer, tick, and mosquito control business, as you know. And we have taken the position that, as such, he is a tradesman as defined in the zoning bylaw, and that use is an allowed use in the highway commercial district. A tradesman, I submit to you, is a professional who in most cases is licensed by the Commonwealth and who plies his trade at the property of his client, where he uses his skill to improve and maintain that property. The example that comes immediately to mind is that of an electrician. An electrician is licensed and he plies his trade at the property of his client, where he uses his skill to improve and maintain the client's property. Mr. Mulcahy's business is no different. He's licensed by the Commonwealth, and he plies his trade at the property of his client, where he uses his skill to maintain and preserve and protect that property. His vehicles are similar to the vehicles that you might find of any tradesman. We've met with the building commissioner, Robert Francis, on this issue, and he understands our position. I submitted some memoranda to him, and we met with him and Mr. Cole as recently as this morning to discuss this issue with him. He went on the internet and downloaded several examples of quote-unquote tradesmen. Deer, tick, and mosquito control licensed professionals was not among them, however, perhaps because it is a relatively new trade, but I don't know why it wasn't specifically listed. We were able today to provide him with documentation from the trade that describes what they do as tradesmen, and sent that to him. I don't know if he had a chance to look at it because the time was short, but I think I can fairly relate to you that he would feel more comfortable if the board reached a consensus, at least with respect to use, that this use by Mr. Mulcahy is in fact that of a tradesman. That's quite apart from what you decide to do on the site plan approval and the special permit approval that we're seeking. But I think he just would feel more comfortable, rather than being the sole person who makes this judgment, if the board expressed to him your consensus, if you have such a consensus, that this indeed is that of a bona fide tradesman use. Then we have no problem in finding the hook in the bylaw on which to hang this use. And I think he would appreciate that guidance from you if in fact you're prepared to give him that guidance. So that was the second purpose for my appearance here tonight. One was to ask for the continuance, and the other was to ask for your feedback on that, for his benefit.
Well, we did go to town council, and we asked town council what they thought about this. And I'll just read a few sentences of what the town council says. It says, the bylaw section 2230B allows a craftsman tradesman's use in the HC zoning district. Further, the bylaw defines craftsman/tradesman as a craftsman/tradesman shall mean a retail and or service provided by a worker who practices a trade or handicraft, one who creates or performs with skill or dexterity, especially in the manual arts, such as a jeweler, cabinet maker, or frame person, etc. In my opinion, the proposed use of the property is problematic in that it is proposing adding to a non-conforming use single-family dwelling as a single-family residential use is not allowed in the HC zoning district. Applicant intends to continue the non-conforming residential use and add the proposed use. The proposal does not qualify as a home occupation pursuant to bylaw sections 2241 and/or 2242, as the proposed addition does not qualify. Says further, the applicant asserts that his proposed use is conforming as it falls under the craftsman tradesman use. To support his assertion that the proposed use falls under the tradesman, applicant has submitted a narrative indicating the employee of Odia drive trucks filled with chemicals that repel ticks and mosquitoes. Presumably the trucks are filled up with the trucks are filled up at the addition, and any necessary repairs will be conducted at the premises. It says, in my opinion, the narrative does not support the assertion that Odia qualifies as a tradesman. The applicant is not proposing to sell a product manufactured by him. He's proposing to store chemicals purchased from a third party and possibly trucks in the proposed addition. The trucks will then apply said chemicals on property of customers, and the actual use of the property appears to be primarily storage and perhaps light equipment repair, a use which more likely could be considered wholesale warehouse or a distribution facility. So that's what town council
Mr. Chairman, the next paragraph of her letter, however, says that the ultimate definition of whether or not
we can do this is the planning board.
Is the town's. In other words, in the next paragraph, she says, ultimately, it's for the town's interpretation, in the very next paragraph, to interpret its own bylaw. And I would just say to you that I know that there are two electricians who ply their trade at Commerce Way who operate out of buildings that were approved under the tradesman characterization. And I see no difference, frankly, between the use here by Mr. Mulcahy and the use that would be proposed by an electrician or a plumber or any other licensed professional. I also have to say this. The opinion from town council further goes on to say that we cannot even get a use variance from the Board of Appeals because, in her opinion, the Board of Appeals has no authority to grant use variances, which came as news to me when it applies to non-agricultural residential districts. So if you do not consider this use to be that of a tradesman, this whole project is dead because we cannot get relief from the Board of Appeals, and any site plan approval or special permit approval that we receive here will do us no good. Now, this property is located across the street from Tractor Supply. It has garnered to date, to my knowledge, very little, if any, opposition. And although that doesn't necessarily determine the conclusion of a legal question, I just want you to understand that characterization is important here, and if you take a narrow view rather than what I think is a logical view, it will deep six this project on this site. And Mr. Mulcahy is prepared to accept whatever reasonable conditions the board may choose to attach to site plan approval or special permit approval. So it's that issue is a not just a game changer, it's a deal breaker. So I just want to put that before you. It's an issue we have to deal with, and when Mr. Francis looked on the internet today, as I say, he found many examples of tradesmen, but he did not see one specifically addressed to this trade. But to me, this looks like a tradesman's vehicle, and I don't see what the difference is, and between that and the other examples I've given. If this is an issue that you want some time to think over, we're prepared to file the application for the special permit and advertise it and come back on December 11th in the hope that if you find that the project has merit, you'll make a decision that shows we haven't wasted our time. But that's our risk.
Yes, yes, it is.
That's our risk.
I don't know if anybody else on the board has,
Mr. Cole, have I represented the discussion this morning accurately?
Seems about accurate, Mr. Cirque, yes.
Okay.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, I was thinking about this a little bit today when I read this, and I don't know if maybe it was possible where there's a non-conforming use with that use being used for somebody renting it as a home, where maybe possibly somebody renting it as an office where it wasn't necessarily a home, where that might help. I see, which I don't know if I'm by myself on this, but I just see that the storage is a problem and nothing else. The storage of a chemical that is going to be on a piece of property where somebody is also living.
Yeah. Where's Mr. Mulcahy? Let me just say this. The only reason why the residential use, which is a pre-existing non-conforming use, is proposed to continue is because his lender
It's necessary for
is necessary. But he's willing to accept a condition to any approval that he would get that would terminate that in 5 years. So that you need not worry that it will last forever and that he wants both things interminably. But perhaps, if I may, perhaps Mr. Mulcahy can address the issue of storage and chemicals.
Yeah, so that letter mentions chemicals several times, and I believe we've gone over that the product itself is not a chemical. It's essential oil extracts. The deer control is a food-based stuff that you can buy at, say, Costco and mixed.
Could you provide a material safety data sheet? You only have labels in your spill response pack.
I have,
Do you have them? I
you-
thought I,
you have furnished me with such a list, and I can give it to you tonight.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
and material safety data sheet is primarily for the companies that produce the product, and then the trucking companies that truck it across in huge bulk. So they're actually going long distance. It's not essentially for the 1 drum or 2 drums that would be on the
I
property.
would have to disagree with you on that, because the material safety data sheet also talks about what to do in case of a fire. I think on one of the labels, it just says to contact the manufacturer. If you try to contact that manufacturer, they say that the company's been sold. And then you'd have to look further into the material safety data sheet. So if you look on there, there's flash points, there's different tips on if the product's ingested. I mean, you kind of need to have that.
Yeah, I have no problem holding,
Yeah,
having
yeah.
it available.
Right.
But
right.
Speaking with all the manufacturers on my end, that's the main purpose.
Mr. Chair, and then, of course, maybe a second suggestion. Obviously, you have to have this material brought to you. You don't have anywhere else it would go. The idea of what you're doing there, what you're proposing to do there, I think is perfect for the area, with the exception of the storage. So I look at the storage as a problem, and again, with the non-conforming use, that I do see that you're willing to, to end that, and I do realize that you have to have that income coming in, but it seems like those are the two things that are kind of hung up in that, in your particular situation.
I know in the past, we've discussed the in-ground tank system that has to be in for a garage space, which that would, I believe it was 1,000 or 1,500 gallons. And the amount of product that we hold is minimum that the concentrate is held inside the building. So if that were to say, leak, it would be draining into that tank. So.
Yeah, that would have to be, Stephen, that would have to be clearly agreed upon by the Board of Health, would it not?
I'm gonna pass these on to the secretary.
I think the problem is that initially, the building inspector told us that he didn't think that this was an applicable use to the zone. The town consulting engineer told us that this wasn't a use for that area. And then with the addition of town council saying this, so we've had 3 people advise us that this wasn't a correct use of the property. And so that's the, those are people that we rely on for their advice. And
Understood. But I don't believe that Mr. Francis had the benefit of our analysis at the time he made his initial decision. And I can tell you that, as I said before, town council ultimately, in the bottom, at the end of the day, indicated it's for the town to make a determination as to whether this qualifies as a tradesman. I can't for the life of me see any difference between what Mr. Mulcahy does and whatever you envision a tradesman does. And as far as the storage of chemicals is concerned, we are prepared to abide by, as I said, whatever conditions Mr. Martin, in his review from Fuss and O'Neill, recommends to make sure that not only the safety of the resident who would be there for 5 years, but the safety and the preservation of the aquifer will be protected. Anyway, that I don't want to take your time and repeat my arguments, but I think that Mr. Francis just needs a little backup in order to be able to agree with us. I'd like to believe that, at first, I think people thought that craftsman/craftsman meant that a tradesman/craftsman meant that a tradesman had to make something. But no, the definition is in the alternative. You can be a tradesman or you can be a craftsman. Mr. Mulcahy is not a craftsman. He does not make something. He's a tradesman because he uses his skill in order to build and improve property that's owned by his clients. And whether you're a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or you name it, I don't think he is in any way substantially different from any of those examples. As I said, if you're willing to keep your mind open, we're willing to continue with the submission process. And again, I would ask you to step away from narrow definitions in the bylaw and look at the greater good and ask yourselves whether this is a proper site and this is a proper use on that site, given where it is, and given the safeguards that we're prepared to accept and the conditions that I just mentioned with respect to time limiting the residential use. But it's your call. It's Mr. Francis's call, but your guidance will help him. But if you want to keep that open, we're prepared to take a chance on hoping to secure your support.
When you were talking about a tradesman, the example you gave was an electrician, saying it's someone licensed to perform something. And then you mentioned Mr. Mulcahy is, but I remember at the beginning of the public hearing, someone had asked on the board if he was licensed, and I believe he said that you don't have to be to do this, but that he is.
So I am licensed, my manager's licensed. It's like an apprentice below him that some of my guys aren't. Their second year, I pretty much make them get licensed just so we have it, just so if clients ask, boards ask, we have a little bit behind us, but due to the EPA fit for a 25B, the product we don't have to have a license, but it's better off that the owner and the guys up top have it and make sure that everything's being applied correctly and everyone's going through the correct training.
But then it wouldn't be like a trade-wise thing, like I'm not an electrician, but correct me if I'm wrong, every electrician has to be licensed to be an electrician, and a plumber has to be licensed too. So if you're going to use that as an example, I just question because it seems pesticide application doesn't have a licensing standard
We need to stipulate that everyone
across the board.
gets licensed.
You
Just
could,
as-
you know, we could throw examples out all night, but painters, they go to a property, they paint a house, they leave. That would be considered a tradesman.
Carpenter?
What was on the list? What was on the list as tradesmen?
Mr. Chair, as I'm recalling, there were 30-some-odd examples, and it was bifurcated into skilled and unskilled. As Mr. Mulcahy mentioned, painter was on the list as an unskilled craftsman tradesman, and it included electricians, carpenters, pretty much most of the examples we've discussed thus far.
All set, Ms. Chen?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, through you, so to the board and also to the applicant, the question really lies on not what he wants to do for a business, before you apply for a special permit and all that other stuff, I think you have to get past this hurdle. Is he a tradesman? Is he a craftsman? So I've got to ask the question, is that list came from where? A website? A building? The state?
I'm unfamiliar with the source that Mr.
Okay.
Francis used.
So that would be questionable for me. I want to know where he was looking and referencing that.
I think he was looking at definitions.
I saw it on Wikipedia as well. Yeah, it was Googled.
He was looking at Google under tradesman.
So your license, through you, Mr. Chair, you have a license to perform this duty of yours? Who gave you the license?
Mass Department of Agriculture gives you the license to be an applicator, core applicator license. Various ways to get it, but it's typically a 2-day course and then a state test.
I'm having a problem with a couple of things. You're telling me one thing, it's through the agricultural department, state agricultural, that gave you this license.
Yep.
Okay. As far as the K&P decision, and also from Fuss and O'Neill, I can understand those are our professional pairs that the town hires, we hire, to rely on them, similar to what you're relying on Mr. Cirque representing you.
Correct.
As in the tail end of K&P's decision, no disrespect to you, Mr. Cirque, an attorney's an attorney.
Yeah.
They're gonna give you a loophole because they wanna fight it somewhere. So I'm gonna hang my hat on that little decision and leave it there.
Which is
I
the one
think-
that, the one that says that we can't get a use variance?
Well, the use variance and also whether or not it's up to the board
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
that decision.
Yeah.
I rely on our building commissioner to give us guidance, same with professionals. It's our decision whether or not, this board's decision, whether or not we need to consider this, whether it's a tradesman's craftsman, and falls under the criteria. As similar to what a tradesman, i.e., you've used it a couple times, electrician. Funny, I am one. But that being said, I'd like to know if his license is through the Department of Agriculture, okay? And agriculture is what? As defined in what? We're an agricultural community. Are they tradesmen or are they farmers?
Well, we think of a farm.
I'm stretching,
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm just
I-
trying to better define this because I don't want the applicant to waste their money
Yeah,
applying for a special permit when, if we decide as a board
no.
that you are not a tradesman, you are not a craftsman, you're dead.
We're not claiming to be a craftsman,
No.
just a tradesman. And rather than being a farmer is someone who grows things.
Mhm.
He's a person who eradicates things.
Sure. I
Preserves
perfectly
And
perfectly
preserves
understand.
vegetation on properties.
Trying to play the devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Because I'm having a hard time getting over whether or not he meets the criteria of the bylaw.
Can I ask a question? Did you specifically apply for your pesticide license to do these chemicals, or were you doing other chemicals prior to that, for other pest control?
So our products do not need this license.
Right, what made you decide to go
What
get the
made me do it
license?
was because I got it last year, and we're getting wind that the state is gonna start requiring licensing. So we said, I'm better off having it, and my guys are better off having it, for the guys that I know that are gonna stay with me.
Right.
So let's get it now, so then if there's any look back, we have it. I have other
A feather in
state
your cap.
licensing that we're better off doing it early, because you can get hit later on. So it was a,
In the future, though, you're gonna limit yourself to just these chemicals, or would you, because you have that license, you then have the ability to put out?
yeah, we're not looking to do any
Restricted, yeah.
chemical,
Okay.
we're looking to only do an all-natural process which at some point the state may require that the FIFRA 25B become licensed, then I have it. But we're not looking at getting into TalStar and some other stuff that's really potent.
Because at the end of the year, you would have to fill out a use report to the state in regards to your license, probably for your entire company, covering all your employees of what you would put out. So I just wanted to know that. If you do that now, or they don't require you to do it.
They do not require us to do it because of the products that we
So you
use.
just basically got the license just to have it?
To have it, because
Okay.
it's better you have it now, and it's
Yeah.
easier to get now than it is tomorrow.
So you're asking us whether we want this thing to end, or whether we would consider continuing this so you could go further?
How do you make that decision?
Yeah.
How do you make the
Yeah.
decision and better define that he's the tradesman?
Personally,
Off the information that we have.
Personally, Mr. Chair, I don't feel comfortable deciding whether you're a tradesman or a craftsman, because I myself am a landscaper, and I am required to carry a license if I'm going to move a bag of fertilizer in my truck to another place. So I would feel really uncomfortable deciding, you know what I mean, sitting here deciding, you know, the difference between, you know, being a tradesman and a craftsman. I just wouldn't feel right about that. I don't feel like I'm the right person to make that decision for you, what you are.
My problem's this, in a nutshell. The professionals that represent us, that we've asked for clarification of the bylaw and clarification of tradesmen slash craftsmen, tell us no. That's the problem.
All three tell us no, and I hate to say it, but it's almost like the council is saying, you've come to mom or dad and you didn't get the answer you wanted, so go to the other one and I'll say it's okay, if they agree. And maybe that doesn't sound good, but it seems like where we're at as far as deciding whether or not, you know, he's a tradesman or a craftsman. I just don't feel good being put in that position.
Maybe the only thing we could do, I mean, this is a suggestion, whether we could get the department heads to look at this, come up with something for our next town meeting to further define. They would come up with suggestions, rewrite the bylaw. We'd have to approve it, and it would have to go before town meeting, maybe expand, better define what a tradesman and craftsman, what's allowed.
The one, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's certainly a worthy endeavor, but that would
That kills the project.
kill the
Yeah.
project.
It's the same thing as just saying that you're not a tradesman
Yeah.
and move on.
But the one thing that, and maybe my fellow board members can help me out with, at first, I'll be honest, I didn't think it fell under tradesman or craftsman, but then the more I'm thinking about the tradesman, like you mentioned, you're not a craftsman and not claiming to be. But the tradesman, when you bring up the painter, who's a tradesman, what's the difference between a painter who performs a service, doesn't have to be licensed, certified?
Right.
I think the main problem that a lot of people have with this is the chemicals that are being stored with a house in the front. And I think that's almost clouding our judgment on the tradesman clarification, because it's two separate issues we have.
That's right.
The tradesman is one, and then that whole chemical with the house is another. And I think we have to decide, and I agree with you, if the tradesman is definitely out, then the project is done. But if we agree that, yes, you are a tradesman, then those other issues, the chemicals, the home,
I
Still have to
I
be
think
addressed.
that's an astute way of analyzing this. Let's assume that we could satisfy Mr. Martin from Fuss and O'Neill and you that the operation on the site is safe and adequately conditioned from an environmental and from the residential point of view. If we could do that, that would eliminate one half of your concerns. At that point, perhaps the classification issue would seem less important relatively. If that's something that you could envisage yourself as possibly getting to, I think that'll give us enough at our own risk to continue this process.
All right. So we just don't keep kicking this down the road.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the issue at hand, because I'd rather either know if we're gonna move to a special permit or not. The applicant's willing to do that, but I don't care if he's willing to do that, because I can't get past the tradesman. I'm gonna go on record by saying, under the decision that was given to us by K&P, it says that a craftsman tradesman shall meet the retail and/or service provided by the worker who practices a trade or handcraft, one who creates or performs a skill or dexterity, especially in manual arts, such as a jeweler, cabinet maker, frame person, etc. etc. My argument's this, and I'll go with whatever the board says, but I'm reading this, and I'm going on the mark of this because I'm a licensed electrician, and I also have a couple other licenses. To get a license from a state agency or from a federal agency to perform a trade or an art requires to meet certain criterias. A state agency is not just going to give you this little thing to perform a service or a trade in other people's properties. This gentleman has a license that's been given him by who?
Mass Department of Agriculture.
It's through a state agency. He met a criteria because he performs a service, or i.e., in my opinion, a trade that provides a service to other people, similar to a plumber or an electrician or an attorney. They pass the bar exam, they perform an art. Doctor, a nurse, same thing. I think that this provision that is here that says, out of our bylaw, under section 2230, that says, frame, etc., gives the ability to better define that. I look at this gentleman that he's licensed to a state agency. That tells me that he is a professional that performs a service. Before I even get into a special permit or anything other than that, a site plan or anything like that, to better define, in my opinion, I think that he is that person. And that's my argument. I don't know how we can say that he ain't. He's licensed by a state agency. I don't know any other way to even look at it any different. And it gives us, according to the bylaw, it gives us the ability to make that determination. And in my opinion, making that determination that he's a tradesman / professional licensed by the state, by a state board, that state board's also governed by a federal agency, tells me that he's got more regulations than we know what to do with. as far as moving on from this point on, that any other criteria will be determined in a special permit. Whether it fits in the criteria of the, where the parcel is or anything like that, special permit. But as far as the tradesman, in my opinion, I think I made an argument that I think he is. I don't know, I don't even know any other way not to say that he ain't.
Only thing that I'm thinking of is when I asked the question of why he has the license, he doesn't need the license to do what he's saying he's going to do. So he has the license, even though he doesn't truly need it to do what he's doing.
I agree with that.
That's the only thing that I can think of with.
The only thing that I can say with that is that I would rather have somebody licensed who is governed by the state performing this art, even though he didn't need it,
Right.
other than, you know, Will trying to do this, because I ain't got a clue on what he does for a living.
Right.
You know what I mean? I agree with you.
Yeah, that's the only great.
That he
area
doesn't,
I can
just because he doesn't require, doesn't mean that him moving above and beyond to become a better service provider of his art, his trade.
With that
We all
then-
strive to be better.
Right, but would that then open up the door to other chemicals? That's why I asked if he was going to,
That,
yeah,
that I think
Yeah.
that I know
right.
we can
We could condition that.
condition
Right.
during the site plan. Doesn't, in the special permit, doesn't mean he's gonna get approval of that
Right,
at all. He can't even get to that stage. He can't even walk in the room until we figure out whether or not he meets the criteria of a tradesman / craftsman under the local bylaw set up by this town. It's our determination whether or not in that one little clause that says et cetera gives that ability. I think my argument better defines that, you know, because he's licensed, because fits under a state agency, and I think that means that he is a specialist in his art of what in his trade.
right. And they hadn't thought of that when they wrote the definition. They didn't think that far ahead.
Because we don't know everything, and this board changes all the time. So that's my argument.
All right. Well, I didn't realize, I was, you know, I had been looking at what was sent us by town council, but I didn't realize that, or I didn't think, I think you may have mentioned it before that you did have a license. It does throw a different light on the subject here. So does the board feel that after this discussion that they should continue?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make it clean. I'd make a motion to better define that the applicant, hold on, I lost his name. David Mulcahy, DBA, DS South Shore, 157 North Main Street, under this bylaw section 2230B, meets the requirements as a tradesman under our local bylaw. That's my motion.
I will second that.
So I have a motion and a second. And further discussion?
Just have one question that, I agree with Will's argument. The one question I have is it because he's licensed that everybody feels better about that? And the reason I bring it up is, he had mentioned he applied for the license, even though it's not necessary. So my next question would be, if we have someone else that decides to get into this type of business and doesn't get the license because, hey, it's not necessary to use it for these type of products, would that be different because he doesn't have a license and Mr. Mulcahy actually went to the time and effort to get that?
I think that the discussion has been to try to refine the definition of tradesman through an amendment to the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
And we're standing here more than willing to help you in that process so that you won't have this kind of confusion the next time around.
Guess the
I would
que-
say, just to answer Jim's question, in my opinion, I would say that because he's licensed and defined in because of his trade and what he's licensed in, he's licensed through a state agency. That better defines him as a tradesman to me. If he just came in, or his worker came in to do the exact same thing, his qualifications are nothing. He's not to me defined as a tradesman or a craftsman. It's just somebody that wants to perform a service without any IE regulations, even though he doesn't need it for what his typical business setup is. I think that would weigh a difference of opinion for me as whether or not he's a tradesman or a craftsman.
But the question is, do all tradesmen or craftsmen have licenses?
No. Absolutely not.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is because what we decide will set a precedent. You know, we always talk about that. We have to be careful what
I
we
agree.
vote. And like I said, I agree. I really do believe that Mr. Mulcahy is a tradesman, but like someone used the painter example before. You know, I could quit my job today and become a painter. You know, doesn't mean I know what I'm doing, but if I come before the board and want to be, I'm a tradesman because a painter is a tradesman in most people's eyes.
If you're just for argument's sake, if you're a painter and you paint a beautiful portrait and you sell for millions of dollars, do you consider yourself a tradesman or a craftsman? Defined in our bylaw.
That's true.
It's just for an
The
argument.
issue is defined in our bylaw,
Yeah, I think it's there.
so
It's just an interpretation
You're an
for
et
us.
All right, so we have before us a motion, and we have a motion and a second to, what was the motion that you
I'm
made?
as a tradesman,
Okay, to define
to agree that he met the qualifications.
as a tradesman, okay.
based on our bylaws,
Based on the bylaw.
Okay,
that Rip will read.
so we have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'm not ready to vote yet. Is that possible?
You can
Can I?
He
abstain.
can abstain.
Okay, I'll do that.
So I guess that takes you over one hurdle.
We will report that to Mr. Francis, because he wanted your guidance, and we'll get that guidance to him tomorrow. And we'll be back then for the special permit application. So I would ask the board to allow this hearing to be continued to December 11, if that suits you.
Do that.
At this time, Mr. Chairman and members, we don't have an agenda prepared for the 11th, but that would give the applicant enough time to be able to advertise the project as well as the abutters. As Mr. Cirque was indicating, this is now more than just the site plan review. It's also now a special permit application.
And that's a separate special permit. It's a
Separate
hearing.
application with a different set of review and inspections, but the bylaws prescribe that when a site plan review is met with a special permit application, the processes shall be coterminous.
Okay. Will you have time to review this for a special permit?
For the 11th, yes, I think that would give staff adequate time to be able to review the application and conduct the necessary reviews and inspections,
Okay.
and make recommendations for conditions.
With the holiday? Okay. Make a motion to continue the public hearing to December 11th at 7 PM.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the, and this is a continuation also believe, yeah. On the application of Borrego Solar Systems, Inc., requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 3100, 3580, and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw located at 72 Center Street in Carver, Mass. It's Assessors Map 70-1-5 to allow a ground-mounted solar-powered generating facility of approximately 499 kilowatts in a residential agricultural district. Good evening.
Good evening. Josh Farkas from Borrego Solar on the development team.
I'm Brandon Smith, civil engineer with Borrego Solar.
Okay, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you all again.
And if I may, I have a few documents that I'd like to pass out.
Sure.
Memo regarding the status of the landscaping that's taking place, and then also a graphic that will help with discussion on some of the Fuss and O'Neill comments.
We did,
Mr. Chairman, through you, motion, clarification. You said this is a special permit for 499 kilowatts in an RA,
yes.
and that's under the application?
Let's see.
Because I have a memo for, addressed to Lynn Doyle. This one here is what? What is this, our decision?
That's a draft decision that I
Draft decision.
handed out, right. If the board is so inclined to close public hearing and
It
vote.
mentions a 600 kilowatt DC, not.
If I can help to clarify, 600 kilowatts DC steps down to 499 kilowatts AC. So that's the rating of what's leaving the property through the power lines.
Thank you.
This is from the application.
Thank you.
So then it is correct? Or just, so,
It's different wording.
The wording is what's bothering me, that's all. One says DC, the other one says,
AC, I believe.
just says 99 kilowatts. No AC, no DC. All right.
all right, go ahead.
Okay, so we've conducted site visits with the board. We've had meetings with the, I guess the sticky point or the point of most emphasis on this project has been the view and the screening for 3 or 4 of the abutters to the project. So we've spent a lot of time over the last several weeks, 3 weeks since we've been in front of the board, trying to address those issues, meeting with individual abutters, communicating through Mr. Cole, and I submitted a memo, which I believe you all have a copy of right now. Submitted a updated memo where we've informally reached consensus or agreement on a screening plan, a proposed budget with each of the abutters that's satisfactory to each of the 4. When I say informally, I mean it's been through email and phone conversations. Mr. Cole's been made aware of all that. So that's covered in the memorandum. So that was, I guess, the big open item that we had since last time meeting with you all. The plan to formalize that is through a formal written agreement with each individual landowner, which has been circulated as of a couple hours ago today. So I've had a chance to speak with everyone. I see them in the audience. Things are definitely going well. They feel like they've been resolved on a handshake level, and there's a little bit of formalizing to do there. And then I guess just open to handle any last minute questions or remaining open items. But that's it feels like we accomplished what we set out to do 3 weeks ago when we sat down with you all.
Okay. And then you hand us out a memo of what you just spoke about, and you also gave us some pictures here.
Yes, so those are, Fuss and O'Neill submitted their latest comments. So we took care of all their previous comments, and they issued a list of suggested conditions, and one of them was access to the bog. So those graphics are what we're proposing to maintain or ensure fire access to the bog. They're ramps basically that are movable, mobile, they can change depending on the type of vehicle that the fire department needs to access the bog with. So that's what that graphic is.
Has the fire department had a chance to take a look at these, if it's suitable for them, or?
We did submit, actually, on the latest submission to Fussin' O'Neill, we submitted a letter from the fire department. And they haven't seen that exactly, but that type of solution is kind of explained or described in their letter.
I think, if I may, I think the part of the receiving the building permit later on down the road would be addressing this issue to their satisfaction. I think that's how it will work. So this is our proposed answer to what they asked us to provide. And you know, whether it's an ATV or a small pickup truck or a big tractor, I think are in some of the pictures you've seen. It feels like that's the best option with access to the bog, because there is a ditch surrounding it, and not knowing where the emergency might be, something that's small and mobile to get there quickly, that's on site. It was kind of the key, instead of a fixed ramp that may not get the right access.
Stephen, did you have anything to add before I let the board members ask questions?
You know, I think the applicant was fairly succinct in providing an update. The only other thing I would mention is that the planning board, of course, conducted a site visit. I think it was November 1st or 8th. I can't recall off the top of my head. We visited not only the project site, but also several of the abutters who had expressed some concern about the obtaining the spirit and the intent of the zoning bylaw as far as screening is concerned. As Mr. Farkas has just mentioned, you know, I understand that he's done a lot of the legwork as lately as today to be able to secure a landscape plan and budget. What's presented before you is a draft of the decision, and if the board is so inclined this evening to close the public hearing and to vote, we can produce the decision for the board's review and discuss the conditions.
Okay, where were those conditions?
I just handed a copy of the draft to some of the board members.
Okay. Okay, so these, 72 Center Street, so the conditions was, one, prior to the issuance of a building permit. Well, okay, before we do that, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions about this project? If you could stand up and just come to the microphone and give us your name and address.
I'm Chuck Howard at 68 Center Street, and after conversations with Barago and site visit by you folks, the leaves are up and now the leaves are down. And this will give you an idea of what we are looking at now. This is taken from our back porch, which is right outside our bedroom window.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
This looks like the first home that we visited.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
And the original agreement, which seemed good at the time when we had still some leaves up there, the 6-foot trees, would possibly be an advantage to blocking the view of the solar panels. After doing some measurements and whatnot, it appears now that the trees would need to be 20 foot. They grow 3 foot per year, optimum. A 6-foot tree to grow to 20 foot, which would just begin to block that section. We're talking 10, 12 years before it has any effect. So 20-foot trees is what I'm looking for. I don't believe that the 6-foot trees and being told to wait 15 years is adequate screening.
All right, so this is something that you're gonna have to address, I guess. You have spoken before, right?
Yeah, when the trees were up and the leaves were up, it appeared that maybe that would work. Now that the trees are stripped, the whole back of my house is facing it. It's going to be an eyesore. I'm all for screening, but it has to be adequate.
So you have to work something out with this gentleman.
So as recent as yesterday afternoon, Mr. Howard and I spoke. So let me back up and just maybe restate something. The proposed screening, given that it's on the abutters properties in 3 cases here, what we've provided is an estimate of, I believe in your case, the number of trees is maybe 20 trees. So that's how we established the budget. We kind of agreed that 20 trees was maybe the number that was adequate here. My opinion, the Borrego screening opinion, 2 different landscapers on site. We met with Mr. Howard and talked through all that. Felt that we had a game plan that satisfied it as early as yesterday, or as recent as yesterday, which was confirmed on the phone and then through an email. So I guess this is a little bit of news to me. So I guess I would potentially defer to the board a little bit on what to do here. I will say that given that we're providing a budget, it's up to each abutter on how to spend that budget, whether it's 20 of the trees that we've provided that we agreed was a good screening solution, or if it's a couple tall ones, a couple short ones, some variety in there. I think that the discussions we've had to date have been to leave that up to the discretion of the landowner. So in each case, so I felt we had an agreement that we talked through and spent quite a bit of time, not just my opinion, not just Mr. Howard's opinion, not just the board's, but also a couple different landscapers, and 3-4 weeks of working through all that, as I guess the memo will walk you through. So
Didn't believe at the time that 20-foot trees was a possibility. It is substantially more expensive, unfortunately. But I don't see anything less than 20-foot trees, and even then it has to grow another 3 or 4 feet to get good coverage.
So I believe most of you went to the site with us, and I believe what Mr. Howard's referring to is that area, the topography drops off quite a bit. I think we also talked about with the landscaping plan that we provided. It's just an example, like Josh said, we're providing a budget that you'd be able to move these around to locations that would be better to screen the area. So I believe Borrego's stance would be that what the budget that we provide would be able to attain that adequate screening. Maybe not with this exact schematic, because that topography does drop off, but moving those to the higher elevations closer to the house, I think would provide that screening.
That takes away my yard. I'm more inclined to go along the property line and build up. And that's where the taller trees would be, in my opinion, necessary.
Right, and with the budget that I think would be providing, that would be Mr. Howard's prerogative. I think that would be acceptable, that you'd be able to do that with the budget that we'd be providing.
The budget you provided is substantially different price-wise from a 6-foot tree to a 20-foot tree. Substantially, and kind of shocking.
But I think this is something that you got to work out with the property owners, and I would like to see, before we approve a decision on this, is, the written agreements that you have with the abutters, just so that we know that they're happy with, what you're going to provide for them. And
there's the potential at some point in the next few years that we'd be wanting to sell. So I want that screening to be
Sure,
adequate.
sure. I understand that. I think that you're just gonna have to work with these,
Yeah.
So if I may, my one concern there is, and I totally understand this topic, I almost would prefer that it was at the board's discretion, that we've met what you feel is the key to make this a successful project. I think case in point, just a few hours ago, we had, and I understand where you're coming from. We had an agreement that, I confirmed with Mr. Cole, and we were on the same page, and now, less than a day later, we're in a different spot. So just looking for a board to help, I guess,
Yeah,
work through that.
There's some measuring done and grade.
You're all welcome to come back now. Louise Howard.
Yeah.
I'm his wife. And take a look at it without the
It's substantially
weeds.
different than
mean,
I expected it to be.
The difference is incredible. It is going to absolutely kill any resale value. And I just think it would behoove you to take a look at what we'll be staring at.
So I just had
Pretty obvious.
just a quick question. So originally when we did the site walk, I think you just maybe even said this, that originally when you talked about the screening at the peak of the backyard before it dipped down. So now you want to have it where basically we're at the end of your property line,
Correct.
where there's a
Correct.
giant
We can
slope.
see we can see where the pad is going to be put in. We can see his construction equipment sitting there now. A week ago, it wasn't quite so obvious.
We had a storm come in over the weekend, just,
Stripped the trees, and it was like, ooh.
it's just a really a dramatic difference. And then putting any trees up on our hill is just cutting off half of our
Cuts our yard,
property.
Backyard, yep.
And that's not a good situation either.
I will say we are sympathetic, and I hope I've earned maybe a show of good faith that there's a lot of time to be put in, and I'm trying, and
The visuals have changed since our.
Sure. So
I was agreeable.
So if that is the case, I feel comfortable enough that we could work it out, like we,
Oh, I'm willing to work.
So I would accept that as a condition for this, that we work it out, and if we can't, we can't. I'm confident in that because I felt like we worked it out once. I just want to make sure that, working it out is defined fairly for everybody, just like,
Changed things a little bit at the last minute there, and it is a little bit on the shocking side. I mean, this is right out my bedroom and living room window that we'll be looking at.
And it's the deck.
I don't want to wait 20 years for the trees to grow.
Can I ask you guys, when we were doing the site visit, I took pictures from your property. So, I can see the difference. This was the day that we were there.
Right, so you seem to be somewhat elevated when you took that
That's halfway
picture?
up the hill.
Halfway up
Yeah,
the
that's
hill?
where we were.
Okay.
And now you
Yeah.
can see,
And now,
Sure.
so that's 6 months out of the
Yeah.
year, you're
I mean,
going to
this-
be
So
looking
that's what
at-
it
this
looked
is a
like the
piece
day
of
we
machinery
went.
on the proposed pad.
Yeah.
It was
I don't know
something we
if you
didn't
wanna
have
put it. That's what it looked
a
like.
view of.
The day that we were there.
where's the
Yeah,
existing trees now? Is that on the top of the hill, or are the?
Right on the property line. I
At-
mean,
at
in
the
the
bottom of the
summertime,
hill.
they cover fairly well. In the wintertime, it all strips down. It stripped down more than my memory.
No, but I was thinking, I remember your house was on top of the hill.
Right.
And then you had a backyard, and then it sloped
drops
down.
down.
And then you had trees. Now, were the trees naturally there at the bottom?
Naturally.
They're at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
Okay. And so they were proposing to put some trees on the top of the hill because that would
That was
actually.
a suggestion.
Yeah,
We weren't thrilled with that idea because it breaks up the yard. I got kids that run all over the place and play baseball. We want to keep our yard as open as possible, but we want that view to be at least obscured.
right. Of course, the elevation is the problem.
It is the problem.
If,
A
you know,
20-foot tree just reaches the point where I'll see the top of it, but they grow 3 feet a year. So instead of waiting 10 years, I'm waiting 1.5 years, 2 years.
So
Well,
we're-
it's it's the placement of the screening then, whether you're gonna put it at the bottom of the hill, whether you're gonna put it at the top of the hill, whether you're gonna put it midway, maybe, that,
I didn't realize there was, an availability for the 20-foot trees, but there are. I mean, they're not cheap, but it would provide the screening that we're looking for.
I'm committed to try to reach that point with you, 100%. Whether it's 20, smaller 5 to 6 foot trees at higher elevation, or I don't know what the number is of larger trees at a lower elevation, but there's some math involved there for sure. But I'm certainly committed to reach the same goal. Yeah.
You've been good. I mean, it's just got to be dealt with. That's all.
Yeah. No, it's a big deal.
All right. We'll work together.
Thanks.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, could I also address the board?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Mark Townsend, 10 Harvest View Way. And there were a couple of other things that we talked about when Mr. Cole and Mr. Farkas and I and the abutters walked the bogs, and I just want to make sure if they're not part of the conditions that they can be considered. One was, can I use your?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
One was that over in here, there's gonna, where the pad is going to be, there's gonna be some lighting. And we talked about having the lighting oriented toward the swamp over here and away from all the properties so that the abutters wouldn't, the lighting wouldn't be an issue. And the other was that one of the reasons, so I'm one of the Harvest View abutters, and one of the reasons we even see down there now is when a while ago, that property was a big clear cut done in there, and it was cut way back. So one of the things we talked about with Mr. Cole and Mr. Farkas was sort of a, I guess you'd call it a no-touch zone, where the remaining forested land stays that way. So that doesn't change, because any screening agreements we come to would be totally changed if you were to come up and cut down the rest of the forest. So I want to make sure those are addressed
Okay,
in the conditions, okay?
okay, very good, yep.
Thank you.
And if I may address the lighting item. So the lights we use, they're dual and they are adjustable, so there's no issue with that. They'll be pointed away or whatever the optimum, angle is to avoid shining lights into any abutters. They're also going to be on a hard switch, so.
And they should shine down.
Correct.
Right.
They'll be pointed at the
Out.
equipment. Yeah, they're about 9 feet tall, and it'll be pointed at the equipment down below anyway, so they won't be, they're shrouded. They won't be pointed out, so it's no issue there.
Normally off?
I'm sorry?
Are they normally off?
They're motion activated, so they're typically off, right? They're in an enclosed area, so they're not going to be triggered by any, movement or anything like
So the
that within
enclosed
the
area
enclosure.
is the fenced area that you have on the plan?
Yes, that's where they'll be located, in that equipment area.
And just because I'm on it, I didn't see on the plan fencing around the array that's required by the NEC, 690-31A.
That's correct. There's no fencing, no perimeter fence around the array. What we're going to be doing for this site, I think we talked about it last meeting, is that behind the modules, we're going to be there's going to be a mesh, basically, a poly mesh that's going to protect and eliminate any unwanted intrusion into the electrical components of the modules.
Is the poly mesh approved as a safeguard against any voltage over 30 volts?
It is. We have installed it. I can't speak to that exact approval, but I know that we haven't done it on other projects. Up in Whitehall, New York, we've installed this. And per the NEC, I may not get this exactly right, but it just needs to inhibit make it not readily accessible. So that mesh is, will stop that. The equipment areas are surrounded by a 6-foot fence with a foot of barbed wire.
So I have the NEC, 690-31, item A, and under paragraph 2, where the PV source and the output circuits operate at voltage greater than 30 volts are installed on readily accessible locations. Circuit conductors shall be guarded and installed in type MC cable or raceway or ambient temperature exceeding 30 degrees centigrade. So the cables in that product that you're saying you're using, the mesh, I want to know if it's going to be UL approved to safeguard that items.
I mean, we were definitely amenable. We can make sure of that. I can't speak to that right now.
I would say
but-
just provide the UL that it safeguards that. That'll be sufficient enough to provide underneath the code.
Okay. We can do that.
Other than that, fencing.
Yeah.
What, there's a way, it's pretty clear under the NEC.
We submitted, last meeting, we submitted an excerpt from the NEC.
I just pulled it up.
Right. But we'll take a look at that and ensure that it is,
Yep.
you know, we're not going to be exposing anyone to any electrical hazard.
Yep.
Before the board started asking questions, is there anyone out in the audience that has any questions? Any further questions? All right. Any board members? Any additional questions?
I appreciate you turning to a local landscaper to work with, and I think it's great you're working with the abutters that have responded, but there's that one house on Center Street that has what I think is probably the worst view of it because the solar panels are facing their house. And I know that you've said and you've concurred that whoever lives there has been reached out to and hasn't responded. So I don't see any sort of landscape plan for that. But I'm not sure that it's reasonable to expect a citizen to respond to something like that in order to try to have a bylaw upheld as far as the screening goes. So I don't think screening for that house should be ignored simply because the resident didn't respond in somehow. Maybe it was someone had said, get it in writing from the abutters that the screening was adequate. Mm-hmm. I feel the same should go. Get something from that abutter in writing that says we don't need anything. But just because we haven't heard from someone, I don't think a resident should have to respond to have a bylaw adhered to. So I'd just like to see something for or from that resident, even though we acknowledge that they have not responded.
So a potential screening solution included on the plan for that resident, should it come to fruition, basically?
Yeah.
Sure.
So that person's not left out simply because they didn't respond to a letter or come to the hearing.
Yep, and I think we've talked about this a little bit today, where we would handle their situation just like we've handled the others. Mm-hmm. So I'm certainly open to that. We are certainly open to that without a doubt.
If I was them, I would have responded right away. Like I said, they have what I think is the worst view, but I can't speak for them. Maybe they don't care. Mm-hmm. But
has anybody tried to reach out to those people?
They were on our abutter notification list, and I believe the green cards confirm the delivery of it, and that's been the extent of it.
It would be good if it's possible, because who knows if these people are on vacation or if there's a sickness in the family or something has happened that they haven't responded. It would be nice to have an answer one way or the other, whether they're concerned about screening or if they're not concerned about screening. So
we can certainly do it. I guess I'd say that a little repetitive here, but we'd handle it the same way. We'd establish a budget and come up with a plan for them. Yeah. So we'd accept that as a condition when and if it does arise. And we'll be proactive with it too.
Okay.
We'll do more than just sit there with our fingers crossed.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, through you,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the decommissioning breakdown cost.
Yeah, I don't think we have gone through that yet.
Did you guys provide a decommissioning cost analysis breakdown to the board?
Yes, I believe that was provided on the initial submission.
And generally, we do 125%.
Yeah, I was just looking for a dollar number to make sure that was in there.
In the packet. Yeah, this page, the color rating was right in
Here,
front of
Lou, I
that,
got it
if you
for
can find that.
Thank you.
Yep.
But that'll be written up in the decision anyway, which would vote on at our next meeting.
Yep.
Is there any other questions? Anticipated
No, but I'm
questions?
Just going through paperwork, that's all.
You know, what I thought I'd do tonight would be to close the public hearing and then to vote on the decision at our next meeting.
The only question that I'm seeing at this particular, I got it right here. As I'm going through the paperwork, the information that you addressed for the fire department's concerns, the ramping, was that, do we have documentation from the fire department that fire department was good with that?
Yeah, do we?
That they're good with that specific ramp, or just the site in general, do you mean? Are you referring to the ramp or the project, I guess?
The ramp is the key, because if they need to get equipment on there,
Yep.
whether or not that meets the standards of the fire department. I didn't
So-
see that in a memo from them.
Correct. So I'll say this, there's a lot of ramps that would work for this application that we could have given you a packet of. I think we basically gave an example of one. There's no doubt that there's a ramp that answers the question. I believe it's going to be a contingency of the building permit. We can certainly seek having the exact ramp style approved at this point. You know, if you look at the farm now, there's some ramps on site that allow big machinery, whether it's you know, I use the word big. I don't know. I don't believe excavators are going out there, but I believe they could on the existing ramps. Pickup truck, something kind of in the middle of that. All different sizes can be accommodated with these different ramps. So I think it's a matter of picking from a really big list of them, the one or the ones that are most appropriate.
Okay.
We saw it as one of the conditions recommended by the peer reviewer, so we just wanted to provide one visual for what the solution
I
could be.
just want to make sure that they're happy with the conditions and how they're going to gain access.
Absolutely.
That's key, so I'll be looking for something from the fire department. Other than that, I'm pretty good for right now.
Anyone else? Anything else? Anybody?
You
Yes.
wanted to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I figured if we close the public hearing tonight and then we voted on the decision at the next meeting.
The only problem that I might have with that is if we do get this neighbor that hasn't responded, we can get in touch with them between now and then they can speak at the next meeting if we keep it open till then. As long
Oh,
as we're gonna vote anyways. We're not
yeah,
gonna vote
that's
tonight.
true. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
So we'll give them every opportunity possible.
Yes,
We're not
okay.
delaying the decision at all,
Well-
because we're gonna vote until the next meeting.
Sure.
Question, through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant. Are you under any strict timeframes to get your permits?
We are, yes.
What's your
So,
timeframe?
so the Massachusetts Smart Program opens up at the end of this month. We've been waiting for it for a couple of years.
Yep.
This project is probably one of the most mature projects in the state from an interconnection standpoint. So and this is the absolute key to the project, don't get me wrong, but this is the final piece, so we're ready to go with everything else. So if there's any circumstance by which we could vote tonight with, frankly, very strong conditions of meeting Mr. Howard's request that he's asked for, leaving an open item for the abutter we have not and may not hear from, or may hear from, we would, I was just about to say, if there's any way we could do that, it would mean a lot to the project. If that's possible, that's what we'd be hoping for.
So I asked the question because I know that there's contingencies involved there.
Yeah, anyone who's familiar with this project, and I know this is the first time it's been in front of the planning board, but I know there's some Conservation Commission members that either are or were here tonight. I've gotten to know the abutters quite well. It's been going for a long time, so we're hoping we're going to be ready to go when the program opens, especially with some of these screening requirements. The later you qualify for this program, the less it's worth, and frankly, the faster the math or the budget that's available for these screening items disappears. So much of the proposals I've been putting to date, I think, and hopefully Mr. Cole would agree, have been pretty generous. I'm not trying to skimp by on a small budget. I'm trying to go above and beyond. I'm in the best position to do that with an early decision with heavy contingencies, because frankly, the project is worth a little bit extra, and it allows a little bit extra, kind of along the lines of how I've been operating so far. So thank you for asking the question.
I think it's important to understand that there's a financial piece that makes the project viable or dead.
100%. And this is in big picture, if you look at the state of Massachusetts, the commercial industrial solar installations, this one is tiny. It's extremely
Very
small.
tiny.
It's tiny. It's 600 kilowatts on the DC size. As a company, we probably average projects that are 2 to 3 megawatts. The majority of the projects in the new Massachusetts program are going to be between 5, 6, and 7 megawatts. That's what I would say the majority of the Massachusetts pipeline looks like. So this is an extremely small project with very tight margins that we're trying to do the best we can. And on a project this size, qualifying earlier, I can do a lot better than I can if we get delayed. Not delayed, but if we miss the opening round. Very significant from a financial standpoint. So, again, thanks for asking the
You
question.
understand that you still have a 21-day appeal process?
Yep, we do.
That's at your risk?
We understand that, yes.
Got it.
That's why Mr. Cole and I have talked a little bit about having a, pre-drafted letter to potentially be voted on and signed tonight to start the appeals process tomorrow. So please condition the heck out of us if it's an option.
There's a first.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? Through you, Josh, the state SMART program is set up in blocks, correct? And so block 1, the application process opens, if I'm remembering correctly, on the 26th.
Correct.
And once all of the applications have been reviewed by the state and awarded, that incentive block is effectively gone, and then they move to block 2, block 3, lower incentives, as it were, the further down the chain you go. Is that correct?
Correct. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was also going to follow up. It was also my recollection that anything submitted that first week to the state would be considered as effectively equal applications, even if it comes in after the 26th, but before block 1 is exhausted.
That's correct. Well,
But you do run the risk that
26th.
your application, if this board votes on the 27th, even if you were to have your application in on the 28th, it's possible that the state will be inundated with applications for block 1, and it could very well be exhausted by the 28th.
They are definitely going to be. The best thing this project has going for it is how old the interconnection services agreement is, the ISA with the utility. Those projects are actually sorted by the ISA date. So this project, when it gets submitted with all the other ones, will go right to the front of the line. That's why I said it's a very mature project. If we miss that first, opening of the program, it's not like only block 1 disappears the first day. Multiple blocks. It's a multi-gigawatt size program. We're expecting, there's a lot of theories out there, but we're expecting hundreds and hundreds of megawatts to be claimed on like the day the program opens. At Borrego, we've got rough numbers, 50 to 100 megawatts as one company across the state. So, and there's a lot of companies out there. So if we miss that, the economics really change, not just by one block, but by multiple blocks, most likely.
So do you want me to read I can read the conditions, and then we'll see if we want to add any?
I think the question Jim brought up is
Where do we
is
stand with
prudent.
closing the hearing?
Do we close the hearing or we don't? The resident that Jim's concerned about, if we identify in the conditions
Right.
the ability to mirror the same type of screening that the other abutters are going to get, should cover that.
You think?
Whether or not they act on it or not, the developer is willing to do, quote unquote, condition whatever we need to get to that point. I think that the project in a whole is a good project. I don't see where it's not advantageous to do that. The residents that are here now, it appears that their concerns are addressed and that they appear to have a partner that wants to work with them, and we're gonna condition it so being. So, that's my opinion.
As long as there's no other buddy in the audience that wants to speak on this.
Mr. Chairman?
Mm-hmm.
Before you close the public hearing, could I just ask, as far as the conditions, is there anything regarding the no touch or no cut zone that I mentioned previously in my remarks? Is there anything in the conditions?
We will add that into the conditions. Yeah, we'll add that.
Mr. Chairman, draft condition number 6 does speak to that issue that Mr. Townsend has referenced, and I've just added an additional section of that. If I may read that provisional condition?
Sure.
Prior to the issuance of building permits, the project's landscaping plan must be finalized with the agreed-upon vegetative screening to be determined through discussions with the budding property owners. Signed agreements among Borrego, the applicant, and the abutters must be submitted to the board. The applicant must maintain proper screening throughout the life of the project, as required in the bylaws. Any future development or clearing of vegetative screening will be subject to a review by the planning board as a modification to the approved site plan.
I have a question on that condition. The sentence, the applicant must maintain proper screening throughout the life of the project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we had spoken, basically, you were gonna go over with each of the neighbors, or the abutters, a plan, and then give them a budget to do that. Technically, you won't be maintaining this throughout the life, isn't it? Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
The screening that's planted on other properties?
Right.
Correct. The landscapers, and I think I'd call it the industry standard, is any new plantings will come with a warranty that guarantees they'll survive the growing season. And then effectively, that tree is just like any other tree, where something could happen. But
So that's, I guess that's my question, is that line in that, does that, seems to contradict what we had discussed? I want to make sure it's 100% clear on that.
Well, I think the issue here, Mr. Hoffman, is that the applicant doesn't have site control for the abutting properties, and the only way to achieve the screening as required in the bylaws is to have some kind of plantings or vegetation installed on the abutter's property. It likely will not be screened if the screening has to occur, the vegetation has to occur on the application or the project site.
Okay.
So they lack site control.
So if something happens to something that's planted, because you're giving the abutters money to do the plantings on their property for the screening, if something happens, a tree dies or whatever, that's up to the person that did the planting to give a warranty or guarantee that that's going to live for a certain amount of time, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm far from a professional landscaper, but I think surviving the first growing season is the key to these plants, so or trees. So having a warranty like that was like an absolute must for the criteria of who we talked to.
Okay.
The landscaper of maybe of preference amongst the group was recommended to us by the group.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of confidence there in that individual.
Okay.
But largely, yes. Then after the first growing season, that's where you'll start to see, if it's an arborvitae's, an average of 2 feet of growth per year. And then,
Okay.
But I think to answer the question of, say 10 years in past the initial warranty, I think lacking site control, that would not necessarily, I think that I agree with Mr. Hoffman. I think that line may not be accurate. It would not be the applicant or the system owner that would be able to maintain that. That would be, the landowner.
Okay.
If I can speak.
Just give us your name and address, please.
John Callahan, 14 Harvest View. I think my concern and Mr. Townsend's concern isn't so much what happens on our property with the plantings. Once they've survived for a year, everything's fine. They're kind of our responsibility, and it's what we agreed to. It's more on the side of the bog owner cutting further and then affecting that same view, not by anything that happened on our property, by what would happen on the bog again. So if you can change the wording to incorporate that and get that in, that's all we're concerned with. I'm not concerned with over the life of the project and the trees died on my side, or another tree fell on my side. That's my issue. We just take issue with more clearing, and it could affect me quite heavily, because I already have a pretty clear opening, and there's an area that if he cleared, I could see straight through without any screening whatsoever, so.
And that is one of the conditions, just so you know, that
Right.
any future clearing of the vegetative screening will be subject to review by the planning board as a
Yeah.
modification. So that's one thing Mr. Townsend had
Right.
said, and then we had talked about that time as well, that, and we are all in agreement of that. But my concern was on that one line about the
Wording,
proper
yeah.
screening throughout the life of the project. Because I know in similar projects that Borrego has done, they've maintained that, but that's been on their property. So where this, and I've talked to Mr. Cole about this, about where it's not on their property, that's what just had me a little confused. I want to make sure everything's 100% clear on that.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? So I guess at this point, we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. And
I'll
then
make
read
the motion to
conditions.
close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, just because we didn't give that person a chance.
Okay. We'll condition that, though. We'll. All right, the conditions is one, I'll just read them quickly. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, a true copy of the recorded decision as registered at the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds shall be submitted to the board. And 2, the project must be constructed as approved by the site plan. Any revisions will require approval from the board as a modification of this decision. 3, prior to the issuance of a building permit, applicant shall revise site plans to include emergency vehicle access to bog elevations from adjacent on-site driveways in accordance with recommendations made by the Carver Fire Department. So maybe that'll incorporate that, the ramp question. 4, prior to the issuance of an electrical permit, the applicant shall provide the board with a decommissioning bond in the amount of 125% of construction cost to run with the life of the project. And 5, the project's annual site inspection protocol narrative be revised to include a ground fuels manicuring and maintenance schedule in accordance with the recommendations made by the Carver Fire Department. Manicuring of ground fuels should occur twice per year at a minimum and during the growing season. And 6, prior to issuance of the building permit, the project's landscaping plan must be finalized with the agreed upon screening to be determined through the discussions with the budding property owners. Applicant must maintain proper screening throughout the life of the project. Any future development or clearing of vegetation screening will be subject to review by the planning board as a modification to the approved site plan. So that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Uh-huh.
there was one sentence that, that I added during our discussion.
Okay,
It
yep.
is inserted after discussions with the budding property owners. It states, signed agreements between the applicant and abutters acknowledging acceptable screening must be submitted to the board.
Okay.
It goes on, the applicant must maintain adequate screening throughout the life of the project, as required in the bylaws.
And dust control is required during construction. The roadway apron is to be kept swept and clear of any dust, dirt, or debris. 8, prior to the issuance of an electrical permit, the applicant shall ensure compliance with National Electric Code requirements on access, fencing, and security. A statement of compliance shall be submitted to the board by the electrical inspector. And 9, any outstanding balance of the review and inspections deposits account shall be paid prior to the issuance of a certificate of use and occupancy. And any appeal of this decision must be filed pursuant to Mass General Law, Section 48, Section 117, and shall be filed within 20 days of the filing of this decision with the town clerk. There was also a discussion when we did the site visit about the use of, there was a roadway that directly went to the bog, and then there was a driveway, and one was to be used more than the other when to not, there was a property owner that would, during certain times of the day, didn't want heavy use of that one bigger driveway.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. That was, is Chuck still here? Hi, Chuck. Perhaps Chuck would like to speak more to that, but it was communicated to the planning staff that it is preferred, although understood that roadway closest to number 68 Center Street might be the preferred and main access to the site, that perhaps on occasion the roadway closest to number 72 could be used so that it helps keep down dust. The abutter can keep windows open during springtime, but also it allows for the adequate amount of rest that's necessary for the abutters.
Right. Could we add that into the decision also?
Yes.
Conditions. Okay. Anything else? Any of the board members would like to add?
Maybe just on number 6, that it is still a working cranberry bog. So I think some of the vegetation was cut down prior to assist with shade, or there was too much shade on the bog, that's why they took the trees.
Mhm.
And I think the way it's written, it just doesn't include that, that's not an exception to it. You still can't take down trees, even though you're farming there. It still has to be considered now that there's solar there, that they can't remove those trees.
Well, it says any further development or clearing of vegetation, screening will be subject to the review of the planning board as modification to the approved site plan. So that means there will be no more clearing of vegetation, period.
Period on
Yeah,
that property. Okay.
That's the way I would take that.
Will, does number 8 satisfy what you had asked about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the conditions.
Well, this, you want it on the whole application, correct? Including the conditions? Is that all one vote?
It should be.
Yeah.
Make a motion to accept the application for Borrego Solar, the ground-mounted solar installation, 72 Center Street, with the conditions that were just read by Mr. Mackey.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Any those in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
And abstentions. All right. All right, you're all set. I hope, I mean, I know that you'll work out something with the neighbors there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Mr. Chairman, can I just briefly, I just want to thank Mr. Fox and Mr. Cole for working with the abutters on this. You know, this was a difficult project that had been going on for a couple of years. And, you know, I think we were able to find some common ground. I'm not sure we would have found it without those folks working together. So,
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
I just want to echo Mr. Townsend's comments that obviously in the past there's been lack of communication on projects, and I do appreciate that. You working with the neighbors, working with Mr. Cole, and continue. That's why I have faith that this will, everyone will be happy with it. So I appreciate that on both ends. Everybody being open-minded about it too.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Okay, good night.
One more hearing.
Now, we haven't, this is a continuance, so we have not opened this up?
Correct.
We have not.
It was not correctly advertised the last time, so we're
Okay.
opening the public hearing for this project.
And do I have that? It's probably in here somewhere.
Introduce us.
I don't see it. Do I have a,
Very well done.
okay, public hearing notice.
Did you find it, Mr. Chair? It's a 0 Meadow
Zero
Street.
South Meadow, okay, here it is, okay.
All right, this drafted, I'll do that.
I do, thank you. So let me read this. We have a public hearing notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw, the Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 13th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1, on the application of DHP Realty Trust requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230, 3900 of the Carver zoning bylaw and a definitive subdivision plan pursuant to the Carver rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land for property located on 0 South Meadow Road on Assessors Map 112, Parcel 1-5 in Carver, Mass. To construct a 54-unit pocket neighborhood-style townhouse development. Any persons interested and wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated. A copy of the plan is on file at the town clerk's office and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Carver Planning Board, Bruce Mackey Chair, published dates November 2nd and November 9th of 2018. So good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ed Angley. I'm the attorney on the project, and with me is Sarah Stearns, who is with Beals and Thomas Engineering Company. The matter before you this evening is 1, an application for a special permit for a townhouse development. 2, site plan review, and 3, subdivision approval. The site containing 30 acres in the RA zone has an address of 0 South Meadow Road and is shown as Lot 1-5 on Assessors Map 112 at the Carver Plymouth Town line. Section 3910 of the zoning bylaw states that the purpose of this section, in part, is to encourage the preservation of open land for its scenic beauty, particularly frontage along public ways, to protect the natural environment, to protect the value of real property, to promote more sensitive siting of buildings and better overall site planning, to facilitate the construction and maintenance of streets, utilities, and public services in a more economical and efficient manner, and to promote the development of varied housing opportunities, including housing affordable to low and moderate income families, and provide accompanying conveniences. In this case, we believe we have achieved most of those goals, particularly by placing the proposed units on the east side of the access road and clustering them in discrete neighborhoods as a way of being sensitive to siting of buildings and better overall planning. We've attempted to preserve open land along South Meadow Road by keeping a buffer of natural vegetation, screening the dwellings from street views. We also have about 48% of the site in open space, and it's not just scattered open space, it's a big chunk of open space with our nearest abutters, residential abutters. But most important to us is promoting the development of varied housing opportunities by having 55+ age restriction. Additionally, we will be providing affordable housing according to the bylaw. The 55+ age group has been proven to place fewer demands on the town, resources for services. They bring money into the town. We have our own water supply, septic system, and road system. It is highly unlikely that the road will ever become public. Instead, it will be maintained by the homeowners association. There will be little impact to the school system. Thus, it will most likely have a positive effect on the real estate taxes and excise taxes. It will offer older residences who want to downsize an alternative to moving out of town or moving into a mobile home park for housing. Essentially, I think when we were last here informally, I discussed the water situation, that because of how the state defines public water systems, we had to redo the subdivision so that we could provide separate lots, none of which would have more than 25 people served. So that's what we'll end up with, numerous wells. Of course, on the original subdivision, we had 19 wells, so we have fewer than that now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah. And if you have any questions on that particular matter, I'm more than happy to bore you with it, but I'll attempt not to. So Sarah.
Thank you, Ed. I think Ed kind of covered the high points. I'll just sort of fill in on a couple of items. As many of you remember, we were in front of the board almost a year ago to the day with a 19-lot single-family subdivision. We're here today looking at the same site with a slightly different residential component for the reasons that Ed outlined. Some of the things I just wanted to reiterate and highlight is that there were some valuable lessons learned in our foray a year ago. And in talking with the existing Wade Street abutters, we learned a few things, and we have taken those concerns and the board's concerns and incorporated those into our new design as much as we possibly could, including keeping a natural vegetated buffer, as Ed pointed out, on that entire side of the proposed fairway lane. So all of the housing would be on the east side, farther away from the existing neighborhood. So we really wanted to, keep that in mind as we continued forward. The other thing was that we heard from the neighborhood was some concern over the large stormwater basin that really was designed in compliance with local and state stormwater regulations, but was potentially a bit of an eyesore and not, it was closer to the existing neighborhood just because of the site grading, et cetera. But we really tried to get away from that and spread out the stormwater and come up with a low-impact development drainage system for the site, which we were able to do. And as the board is probably aware, we have met with Fuss and O'Neill and have been in communication with Sean Martin from Fuss and O'Neill and kind of working through some specifics with the drainage design. So we're kind of churning through that as we speak, and I think we'll come up with a nice compromise design. So that will eliminate the need for the sort of monstrous basin, and using existing topography as much as possible. So those were kind of the two key things that we really tried to hone in on in this redesign. So we had an opportunity to incorporate that. And the other thing that I just wanted to point out, with the 55-plus development in accordance with the zoning bylaw for townhouses, open space requirement is 30%, and we're proposing 48%. So that's a big chunk. And as Ed said, it's a contiguous piece of land, so it's not just kind of chopped up into little pieces. It's really a valuable piece of wooded area adjacent to an existing neighborhood. Road is likely going to stay private, and we've met on numerous occasions now with Carver Fire, so we're maintaining the Wade Street emergency access exactly how it was proposed and approved in the earlier rendition of this. So same minor improvements to the existing bog road from Wade Street, gated access to be used only in emergencies, hopefully never, but that's still there. We did submit a revised traffic study with our proposal, and have incorporated Mr. Mueller's recommendations as much as we can, and are also discussing that with Fuss and O'Neill and kind of working through that. And just to kind of recap where we are, we met with you folks on September 11th informally and kind of gave a very similar presentation. We had our technical review committee session on October 9th with department staff. There were very few comments. And as I said, we had worked through Carver Fire requirements in terms of hydrant locations, roadway width, driveway lengths, emergency access, and those sorts of things. So those are compliant and reiterated this week, actually, by Carver Fire, when Fuss and O'Neill just wanted to confirm they were okay with certain aspects. So we're good there. And we're here tonight. If anyone would like to visit the site, we're certainly happy to try to schedule that. I know many of you have been there. It looks the same as it did last year, but happy to walk out there again. If the board can't all go at once, I work 10 minutes away. I live in town. I'm happy to meet individually and take a walk out there anytime that's convenient for any members that would like to see it. That's really all I have. We have requested some waivers. They're outlined in the application, primarily with the roadway drainage design and roadway dimensional design requirements. But I'd like to hold off on that until we kind of finish going through the design tweaks with Fuss and O'Neill before we get into the specifics of that.
Okay.
And that's really all I have. Happy to answer any questions that we can.
Well, I definitely would like to see the site, so at some point, can I get contact information for you and we can set something up?
I'll give you my card tonight, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, we'll discuss whether, see who wants to go for a site visit. I know we've been out there before, and I know that, I don't know if north is up on this. North is up, okay. So on the north side of that project, that's just cranberry bogs, right? Okay, and then in the center is?
This is the Plymouth Carver Town line here.
Uh-huh.
This is Village Links Golf Course.
Okay, it's a golf
So
course.
that's in Plymouth.
Okay.
Predominantly.
Mm-hmm.
Our entire project is in Carver, just by being right on the town line, but it's completely in Carver. Whereas the golf course has some parts in Carver and some in Plymouth.
Okay. So the only people that live nearby would be on the south end of that. And I know when we did our walk before, we walked the road. I don't know if the road is, yeah, similarly, is it pretty much in the same place?
We haven't touched it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the road is still in the same spot.
Yeah.
And it was really fully wooded and everything. It was, the main concern that we had at the time were the two drainage basins.
Right,
Yeah.
which was right, the main one was right here.
And it's still there.
Well, there's a much smaller one
Mhm.
on this side of the road, so there's no resident here. This is adjacent to the bog property,
Okay.
this has been retained by 80 Makepeace.
Okay.
We had an easement for the emergency access over the bog road.
Right.
So instead of having the basin here where it was,
Mhm.
almost this entire area, if you recall, adjacent to the back pieces of these existing homes,
Yep.
we've shifted it. We've actually broken it up into three,
Smaller
actually
ones.
4 smaller basins.
Okay.
And again, used the existing topography as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, water's coming this way.
Right.
Whether we want it to or not.
Right, you have to go off the topo.
Yeah, so, I mean, we really had to make the best use of what we had unless we, really wanted to do ridiculous amount of earthwork to
Right.
send water uphill, essentially.
Right.
So what we did was shift the drainage to at least where there is not an existing water. It's a cranberry bog, still in
okay.
conservation. So I don't think that 80 Makepeace cares about the bog being next to a basin.
Right, so that's the one in the middle.
That's right here.
Yeah, and the one to your right is,
It's significantly further away from the
Yeah.
wooded area. So this
Okay.
is the light on the photograph is all going to stay as is.
Mhm.
So none of that wooded area is going to be touched.
Mhm.
This will have a light touch in terms of getting the basin and infrastructure, subsurface infrastructure in for drainage.
Mhm.
And then, the clearing and earthwork associated with the roadway
Okay.
and the buildings themselves.
so the nearest drainage basin would be the one the furthest left, on the
Right.
south side of the road.
Yep, and significantly smaller,
Mhm.
Again, and this is really just kind of for presentation purposes. This is sort of just a gross schematic of what's out there, because it is, like I said, being tweaked a little bit based on our back and forth.
Okay.
Trust and O'Neill. So that may not be the exact size and location of it, but it's going to be generally in that area.
Okay.
And again, just because, primarily due to trying to make use of the existing topography.
Okay.
This is the same thing.
So just to tell the other board members that hadn't walked this property before, those at the time were our main concerns, the drainage basins, and those were the biggest concerns of the neighbors there, because those basins were closest to the property.
Right.
And although the houses were far from the property line, the big lots there, but so that even makes it better. Now, on those drainage basins, is like, in the center is like blue from what, there's a light spot in the middle, and then there's a bunch of green around that. What does that represent?
I'm not sure that may have just been a printing situation. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
quite sure if that's meant to be left as untouched. I'm guessing
Okay.
probably not, but it looks like the bulk of the basins over here. But again, this is really just to give you
Yeah.
an overview, and we will be submitting final plans once we, kind of get those details worked out.
Okay.
I remember the other concern was, prohibited use of that road. And,
Yeah.
and, as I mentioned, we're still proposing to have that gated and locked at all times. So.
The fire department will have a lockbox key.
Yeah, Carver fire locks on it, and I think what we discussed, and I'll have to look at the final plan, but the gate would be past the bog, just to allow the growers to still get in and continue to cultivate the bog without locking them out of there.
I think
That's
that's
what we talked about last time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
that's
we're-
coming
I
in
mean,
off
we're
of Wade,
carrying-
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's coming in off of Wade Street.
Yes, so we're carrying that exact design forward. until it hit here, this kind of took a left and it was, had a sort of a turnout there, but we were able to kind of, on our property, shifted so it kind of was more of a T. Just, once that basin was moved out of there, we had a lot more flexibility with putting the road in where a better place for it, so.
And all I can say to the board members is when we went out there, there's a lot of woods out there.
Well, I've done that before. We had one of those sites.
It's really, really heavy, a lot of big pine trees.
Yeah, we still have some stakes that are staking the center line of
Okay,
the road.
yeah.
The road is essentially in the same place.
Yeah.
The entrance is in exactly the same place, and up here, it's a slightly different layout than what was approved, but it's very, very close to what we saw last time. So the stakes are out there still. Again, we really haven't done much out there, so it looks pretty much the same.
So the biggest thing was the catch basins that were closest to the neighbors going
Right here.
west, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the major one that we looked at that
Right,
time.
it was big, and it went almost right up against the property line, and those don't look as bad as that big one did, yeah.
We've really broken it out into multiple smaller basins, it's a lot of water to manage. Carver Fire requires a very wide road, which we're happy to provide, but we've got to.
Well, not that happy, but.
So it's a lot of pavement,
Okay.
on that, for the roadway that we need to be able to manage the water for. So, again, instead of putting it in one big area, we thought it would be better to look at doing it in smaller chunks throughout the site. It seems to make sense. It will work, and like I said, we're just kind of working out some of the details with us. The engineers are comparing numbers and calculations, so.
Any other questions by the board?
What's your anticipated selling price?
That's out of my realm of what I'm doing here.
Between 350 and 450.
I did bring a couple of renderings from the architect if you want to take a look at them, just to give you an idea. There will likely be two to four
Those are the starting prices for some of
different
which we
templates
sold out.
that will work from.
So they won't be single, they'll either be dual or triple or
Well, there are 6 duplexes.
6, okay,
Six
duplexes.
The rest are single units.
Oh, okay.
The pricing that we just gave you, those were the starting prices at Summer Reach in Plymouth. If you go into town on in Plymouth on Summer Street, that condo project on the left, those were the starting prices. Unbelievably, they sold out so fast. But it's the same architecture. Well, it's very similar. Same architect.
And the affordable units, because we have another project in town, the affordable units will go to, you don't have to be 55 or over for the affordable.
No, that's correct.
Yeah,
No.
by law, right.
That will be whatever mechanism the town has set up for the lotteries and the things that they do. We just do it.
Any other questions by board members this time? All right, anyone out in the audience has any questions or concerns? None at this time. And there's a lot of people out there, too. All right. If you could give us your name and address, please. And
15 Wade Street. I live on the circle. I will just say that the last time I was not happy with what I saw. So this time I will say that I'm much more happy with the way that it's going to roll out and affect my property and the other neighbors and that share Wade Street with myself. They did do a good job of listening to us, because the last time I was pretty loud, some of you were here, some of you weren't. And, I just want to say thanks for listening, and, keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll, all be very happy in the end. My only concern was the low income. I was kind of curious if it falls under, this fall the same as we wrapped up with Boston, because I've been doing a little bit of research on low income housing and stuff like that. Since we're
Yes.
in Plymouth, we are, so those prices come from.
We are lumped in that metropolitan statistical area. But I pointed this out before. If you look at who qualifies for low and moderate income, it's teachers and municipal employees. They're not poor. They just can't afford mortgages that are so high that on a salary that's not great. So really, low and moderate income under the definition is us.
All right, no, I just bring that up because I just hate to see it start at a decent level, and then over time, it's great. That's what I was worried about.
Because it's a condominium, I've had a lot of experience over years in the condominiums, and you've always got the condominium boss that moves in, and they make sure that if there's any problems, they get solved.
Okay, all right, and this will also be maintained, I thought I heard you say, by a property management company.
A homeowners association.
Well, they'll have a homeowners association, which they'll hire somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
it won't be, someone with just running out there, doing whatever.
No, I mean, the idea is to have a community. Right, no, it's gonna have a community. All of the open area will be managed by the homeowners association. Roadways will be plowed and maintained by the homeowners association, those sort of things, so. Yeah. It won't be as dense as that.
Well, the pricing went over there, when they started at $350 to $450, they're up into the sixes.
Oh, yeah, this time is how it's going
Yeah.
in that place, so, that's what, we're concerned about on the road is, on Main Street is, what's it gonna do to our price point, just a resale thing, so, I guess they're in the right ballpark, so, that's another, thing that we wanted to make sure we had things around, and it was already asked, I appreciate that, so, good luck, and hopefully it'll allow us to be able to, I'll be watching it from my backyard, so.
I don't think you'll be able to see anything. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point of information for the board, the planning staff about last week or perhaps the week before received from Mr. Buckley, the Register of Deeds in Plymouth County, an assessment of the average sales price for homes last year as well as this year in 2018. In 2017, the average sales price was $386,816. There has been a 9% increase, and the 2018 average sales price is $420,000 and change.
Instead of single-family homes?
It's a single-family home,
In Plymouth County?
in Plymouth County.
A 9% increase.
It's a 9% increase, yes.
Thanks for that information. Anyone else have any,
Bill Shannon, 7 Bow Street, just a little ways up Bow Street from there, and I just wanted to look at it. So,
Mm-hmm.
where is that, Wayne Street?
Incidentally, the golf course people next door, the Crancies,
I went over there.
are fully in support of us.
But I just, there won't be any construction there for the Wayne Street, will there?
No, everything's gonna come this way.
That was
The
my
only thing that
concern.
will happen here is we have to
It was
do
the,
a little bit of work just to be able to get emergency equipment off of this turns a little tight right now, and a little bit of grading here. But other than that, once that's put in, there won't be anything over on the Wade Street side of things.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Anyone else? Oh, seeing no one at this time, who wants to go on a site visit?
I do.
You want to go on a site visit?
I will.
Do you want to go? Were you on the site visit before?
I had Santa Claus duties last time.
Ah, so you never were.
It was almost a year, almost exactly a year
Really
ago.
was.
Yeah. Do you say the center line of the road is in place? And
Give or take,
I remember, walking it, it's just going through forest and forest out there.
Yep.
And then I think the most important thing would be to, and I don't know when that information will be available, to kind of mark out where the drainage basins are, because that's actually going to be the closest to any kind of abutters visually.
Well, they won't be visible at all from the Wade Street side. From
Really?
these-
Yeah.
from these homes, this all stays, this is so wooded, this goes uphill too
Mhm.
from here, where this road goes up. And then this whole swath, this is off of our property, obviously, but there's a significant buffer here, so we can absolutely mark them out. And how fast can you get those?
Gonna use a chainsaw?
Can you do it in a week, and then we can?
Yeah, we get.
If we can get those marked out within the week, and then we can schedule a site visit tonight, but sometime a week from now or so, to make sure we have those flagged in place.
And then show us, where the entrance is, and then, anything else the board members want to see? Did you want to see anything else?
Entrance here, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
Where the homes are further to the left, I guess west, as far as, I think we discussed when we had that last visit, was any clearing of vegetation going to be removed that's existing now from the neighbor's view?
Everything in dark green is gonna be cleared
Okay.
on this plan. I think what we talked about was.
Because it was near the catch basin, right? That's what we're talking about?
The basin was so large that the concern was that it was gonna be wide open.
Right.
Where it was now wooded. So we had proposed to add some plantings at the property line to
Oh,
help
that's right.
Right.
obscure that view.
And I think that's what these guys are in that area.
Yeah.
that-
But that issue has gone away
Okay.
with this redesign. So we're not touching that wooded area now at all.
Okay, so that basin that's proposed for the furthest one to the left, there'll be no clearing,
This will be cleared,
right?
but this buffer will be left in place.
Okay.
So I guess it probably does make sense to state that.
Yeah,
The
that's
the
probably.
furthest extent, yeah.
We'll
Because
take the edge of that.
Yeah, that was the one I know that was last time we were concerned with, as far as the neighbors could see that.
Yeah,
So if we can see the closest point to the property line,
okay.
I think that's what,
Yeah, so we'll state the limit of clearing for the basins. Do you want us to do the whole thing, or just
Just
the
probably
real-
the back edge, I guess.
The back edge is
Yeah,
all.
I think that's all we
So on the
need.
Wade Street
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
because the other side is just the golf course, right, if I remember right?
Yep.
That-
Yeah, and they're
happy.
They're very supportive.
Yeah.
They even said they'd make a package deal for people to join their club.
Yeah, and the stake, you can actually see it when you drive down South Meadow Road. The center line of the entrance is staked right off the sidewalk. So if you go slowly, you can see right where it's gonna be.
All right, when would you like to, when would you have this, see, today is the 13th.
13th.
And so when would you be able to mark those drainage basins?
Looking at our surveyor. All right, so anytime, so next week is Thanksgiving week, so I would say maybe Tuesday, maybe the only day next week that we could make it happen, possibly Wednesday morning. I don't know if that works for anyone.
I could do Wednesday morning.
That'll be
You?
tough for me with my
Okay.
kids' schools. Could if the rest of the board goes at a certain time, am I allowed to go on my own with her at a convenient time?
Yeah.
Would you mind doing two?
So,
Wednesday's half a day too, right, for school?
yeah, kids have a half day on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Is it better non-school hours or during school for you?
It varies.
Okay.
My schedule is kind of wonky, so.
Okay.
We could work something out, I just probably can't commit right now.
Okay. So otherwise we're hoping to continue to the next scheduled hearing on November 27th. So if we could do it before then, I know things get a little tight with the holiday in there.
So Wednesday is the only day that you could be out there that week?
I can do it anytime on Tuesday. If Ken can get it staked, I can do it Monday. I just don't want to go out there unless everything is flagged for us,
Sure.
because I want you to be able to see everything. And I don't want to speak.
Tuesday, Jen, is that better, or
Yeah, I just,
the time?
well, because of the daylight.
How about,
Yeah,
how about
that's-
Monday, the 19th?
I can't be there
Yeah.
Monday, but it all depends if anybody else. And then, when would you be available next week?
Tuesday. Tuesday, or what are our choices right now, Tuesday or Wednesday morning?
Yeah.
I could probably do Wednesday morning. What time Tuesday? Tuesday would have to be,
I can do Tuesday anytime after, I can do early morning. I mean, it's going to be dark at 4:20, so.
How about Wednesday in the morning? Can we do that? Can you do that? Wednesday morning? Wednesday morning?
I can do Wednesday morning.
What time, yeah, what time? Hopefully we won't be trudging through the snow.
I mean, I can do 8 o'clock and on.
8 o'clock's fine for me. Will, are you interested in going out, or? Huh?
I'm good with the
Okay,
site.
yeah. Jen, would that be good, or?
No,
or would you
I'll
try to
work
arrange
with,
another time?
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
work with
okay.
her. 'cause
All right. 8 o'clock Wednesday morning, then.
It'll be brisk. Okay, so November 21st, Wednesday, 8 a.m. Sounds good. And I
Right.
think it's probably best to meet at the Wade Street Bog, as we did last time.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can get into the site off of South Mountain Road, but there's really nowhere to park other than the golf course, and I don't really want to go next door. So I think if you just pull up next to the bog on Wade Street, that's probably the best way to do it. The road is pretty wide there.
All right, do we want to vote on that? Have a motion to, do we usually, yes.
The abutters be able to, Christian Chevrolet 17, so the abutters be able to walk that as well? This is the closest effect.
Generally, we just,
With us.
yeah, not with us. We don't, we kind of established a policy that when we do the site walk, it's just with the board members. We don't have to take minutes. It's just easier for us to do. If you can arrange with the property owner, Sarah, if, if she wants to take you out there and show you what's out there, that's fine with me. All right, you can talk with Sarah. But we like to be out there alone. It makes it easier for us. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for a site walk at the Wade Street Bog, 8 a.m., Wednesday, the 21st.
I will make said motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. And anyone else will have to make special arrangements. Oh, will you be able to attend?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for considering me.
I'm sorry.
I will be very glad to be there at 8 a.m. on the 21st.
Apple pie and cranberry.
That's right, you never made our first, you weren't here for our first site walk.
Oh, that's not true, Mr.
No, he
Chairman.
was.
You
This was
were.
actually the very first project nigh a year ago that I sat in on, and Sarah took me on a private tour.
Ah,
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
it's
So you got apple pie and we didn't. Got it.
all right, so we'll, and it should be marked out by
So
then.
before we continue the public hearing,
Yep.
I have a question to the applicant. The previous application, did you file with the Registry of Deeds? Did you
Yes.
file that?
Oh, yeah.
It's been recorded, yes.
I sent a copy to the town clerk and to Stephen.
And so this will supersede that
Yes.
if approved?
Right.
If I remember to do a marginal reference.
Do you want to just withdraw it? Have it removed? Oh, come on. All right, the next meeting?
Not that
Yeah,
easy.
let's, if everybody is done, we'll make a motion to entertain a motion for, yeah.
Motion to continue the public hearing to the 27th of November at 7 o'clock.
I'll second.
Motion is second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you. All right, next on the agenda is a minor modification, and it says Sampson's Pond.
Mr. Chairman, in your packets should be a copy of an email that the staff received on July 25th from Art Borden, who is the contractor for this project. He mentions in that email that the developer is finishing up the final site work for paving and has discovered that proposed manhole cover number 10 at the southerly driveway was never installed. Mr. Borden goes on that the developer has installed manhole covers 11 and 12, as well as catch basins 21 and 22. Due to myriad of existing utilities at that intersection, it makes for a very complicated installation of the line connecting to the manhole cover number 11 to number 10. Since there is such a small watershed that contributes to the catch basins number 21 and 22, Mr. Borden was wondering if it would be acceptable to design a small infiltration system in the grass area adjacent to manhole cover number 11. He goes on to say that he would provide necessary calculations and sizing to ensure that this solution will work. Given the elevations in that area of the site, groundwater will not be a problem. In reviewing the original design and plan, it seems that the infiltration system probably would have been the better option anyhow. I have here copies of the then proposed and approved site plan, drainage and utilities plan. I've indicated where drain hole cover, DMH number 10 is at this point here. I'll pass that along for the board's review. Also contained in your packet is a memo from Fuss and O'Neill dated August 24th, 2018, whereby they effectively agree that this would substantiate a minor modification and that the infiltration system as designed does appear to be acceptable to accommodate for the lack of manhole cover number 10's presence.
Okay.
So we're simply asking the board tonight to agree, if you so choose, that this is a minor modification and to accept the modification.
I think the big key here is that Fuss and O'Neill has looked at this and has said that it was okay. If it's okay with them, I think it's okay with me.
Just out of curiosity, the email from Mr. Borden and then the Fuss and O'Neill was back in July.
Yes, yes. The reason we haven't reviewed this beforehand, Mr. Hoffman, is because I like to make sure we get our money before we advance on a project. And so we only just received the check today, in fact, to cover not only the review and inspection by Fuss and O'Neill, but also the $200 minor modification application fee.
That answers my question.
Yes, sir.
So they must be winding
Now
up,
you know what I'm thinking now.
they must be completing the project right about now.
Yes, sir. That's my understanding, is that they're fairly close to completion.
Okay. And this isn't gonna be a public road anyway, this is gonna be part of the condominium.
That's my understanding as well, sir.
Yeah. All right.
You have a gentleman in the audience wishing to comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Savory Moore, 12 South Main Street. Where exactly is this on Sampson's Pond? What is this project?
This is the Pine Ridge project.
Condominiums.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of in back rear of Sampson's Pond, or south, I guess.
Off of Tremont Street.
It's off
Yeah,
of Tremont.
it's off of Tremont Street.
The
Yeah.
agenda said Sampson's Pond, so we said here for 3.5 hours.
Gentlemen.
But we do enjoy your company.
Well, fine meeting.
You guys aren't the only ones that have fun.
That's true. Okay.
And I thought Mr. Robertson was here raiding us.
I just wanted to say hi.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
All right, good night. Other business, planning board member notes.
Hold on. Make a motion to
That's right.
accept the minor modification for the Sampson's Pond LLC as submitted.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
All right, now, planning board member notes.
Just want to wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Ditto.
Exactly. Anything else?
Ditto again.
All right. Planning director notes.
Great job tonight, team. Really appreciate the effort. That's about all I have to share with you tonight.
All right. Minutes of October 9th and October 23rd. October 9th and, okay, October 9th first.
Right, on page 2, I looked at these before, on page 2 of October 9th, when we're talking to Mr. Borden and John Deli Priscoli, down at the bottom when it says, Jen Bogart asked who decided these two locations. John Della Priscoli said it would make sense to enhance the entrance to Edaville and the neighborhood. I would just like it added that I then responded saying that those areas should be considered, but that the final decision of the outside landscaping should be a collaborative effort that we have say in.
Yes.
So I just want to add that I had said we can consider those.
Can you jot down what you want
Sure.
there, and then I will add that?
Yep.
We haven't heard anything more about that. Or you
Not-
haven't heard anything. I have to
not
have
that I'm
Stephen,
aware.
yeah. He comes back.
And then my question, there were two, like, lines where something, it looked like it was supposed to be added in. And I don't know if I was misreading those on page 5 and the top of page 8. I just didn't know what those long, like,
I don't
blank
have a
lines
copy of
were.
it in front of me, so
Here.
I can't.
There's another one at the top of page 8. It says draft. I just saw a long line. I didn't know if I was missing
Was this when
something.
Mary Ann did the meetings?
Yeah, I didn't do these. These aren't mine.
Oh, it says, oh, yeah.
I think Mary Ann may have done these. She was a stand-in for Susan. This was on October 9th, if I'm recalling.
Yeah.
Not bad for a guy who was just out of the room. I will bring this to her attention, and I will ask her about
Oh, there
that.
was some blanks,
She has
yeah.
Yeah, I
another
just wasn't
update on there,
sure.
too, that
Yeah,
she
mine were
was talking
highlighted,
about.
yeah. I think she just didn't catch the names of the people that were speaking.
Oh, it seems here that she's trying to cite here that that the sprinkler system is required in buildings at or greater than 7,500 square feet.
'Cause then on-
I will confirm
yeah.
with her what that blank is.
Because there's another one on page 8. It just says, Hank, we met from blank and Peter Beaton. So it's just, a company name fill-in, but.
There's another one on page 9 as well.
Oh, wait,
So
oh, yeah,
five,
there it is
eight-
too.
Pages 5, 8, and 9?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
And you're right, it is just a business name that she's omitting.
Trustee for, I think it's Mycock Realty on page 9. Just wanted to hear somebody say that, right?
I just needed it pronounced.
There's actually a lawyer, that name too. Not that I need to mention that his wife's name is Pat.
Jesus.
Looked it up on the state. Jen, make sure you give him that.
I'm going to write it now.
Yes.
Yeah, mine are highlighted, are yours? There are a few, but there are a few.
Page 9.
not repeating it, Will.
halfway down the page. The next section after the highlighted blank spot there says, will Sinclair's estimation on the bond for decommission 81,000. The board standard is normally 100,000. I think that was 125%. Not 100,000, so that should be like 125%. I'll make a motion to approve the October 9th as amended.
I'll say.
Second that.
Yep.
Have a motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
All right, October 23rd.
I was not here.
No, I was not here. I was
Okay, yes, it was absent Will Sinclair and Kevin Robinson.
Mr. Chair, I have a determination from the Attorney General's Office, the Division of Open Meeting Laws, that states that absent members may still vote on minutes, as beyond just confirming the content, they're also charged with affirming the form and legality of those minutes. So absent members may vote on minutes to meetings that they were not present.
Get out of it.
I did.
So now I have to go home and read them.
Do you want to put this off to the next meeting, or do you, so you could read them, or do you want to vote on these tonight? Huh?
You have 3 members that can vote on
Yeah.
the content.
But knowing that now, we can always read them.
Yep.
And again, great job getting them out. I think you got them out to us by Friday.
Thursday.
Pat you on the back.
Thanks so much. Although this was a 2-hour, 3-hour-long meeting, so.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of October 23rd.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
And 1 abstention.
2 abstentions, right?
2. Okay. The next meeting, okay, so the next meeting date will be the 27th.
Yes, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, those in favor?
Aye.
And then, thank you and good night.